This week, we will study optimal currency areas and the levels of economic integration. The prescribed chapter from the textbook is chapter 20. The main focus is on the European Union. This is because it is the most economically integrated region in the world. The challenge for you will be to use the theory and evidence provided in this chapter and apply it to the African and South African context. The outline for this week is that I will briefly introduce the topics and discuss the levels of economic integration. The levels of integration is not listed in the textbook, but it is essential for you to understand the discussion on how countries move from autarky to full economic integration. We will then discuss the European Union in terms of what it represents, what the European monetary system is, and its historical development. We will then discuss the monetary and economic policies of the EU. Our third and fourth topic of discussion for the week is the optimal currency area theories and how it is applicable to the European Union. I will then show you examples of South Africa's current trade policies and where these are in the levels of economic integration. A reminder, these levels of economic integration is not fully described in the textbook. Therefore, use the slides and notes and these notes as your guidelines. There are 5 levels of economic integration. The first level is to join a preferential trade agreement. These trade agreements lower the trade restrictions between countries or regions on certain goods and services. An example of this type of agreement is between the European Union and the African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, ACP countries. The next level is a free trade area. This is an area where all trade limitations on goods and services are removed, but where there is no common external trade policy. Examples of this is NAFTA and Mercosur. NAFTA was replaced by the USMCA by Donald Trump in 2018, but many details of the agreement stayed the same. The third level of economic integration for a country is to join a customs union. At this level, countries not only have free trade between them, but also have a common external policy with other countries. An example of this is the EEC, the European Economic Community, the predecessor to the EU, and SACU, the South African Customs Union. The fourth level of economic integration is a common market. Additionally to the external trade policy and free trade, this level includes mobility of factors of production and the free movement of factors of production like capital and labor. An example of this is the European Union. Finally, to fully integrate economically, countries must also add harmonization of institutions and have policy coordination. The European Single Market Union is an example of such integrated policy. The learning objectives of this week is that you should be able to sketch the differences between the various levels of economic integration and provide examples for each level. You must be able to describe and discuss how the European Union's various levels of economic integration, its structure, and economic outcomes. You should be able to articulate the main lessons of the theory of optimum currency areas and illustrate it graphically. You should be able to apply the theory of optimum currency areas of the European Union and conclude whether the European Union is in fact an optimum currency area. You should be able to assess South Africa's trade policy in terms of its levels of economic integration and evaluate whether Africa could integrate economically. What is the European Union? The European Union is a system of international institutions, the first of which originated in 1957 after the Second World War to prevent the European destruction of the 2 world wars and the wars that preceded them. While the ideas were more political, it had significant economic consequences. The system now represents 27 European countries, and other countries regularly try to join. This system of institutions include various bodies in the European Union, like the European Parliament, where laws are ratified, the Council of the European Union, that is appointed by the governments of the various member countries. The European Commission is the executive body of the European Union, while the Courts of Justice interprets European law. Finally, the European Central Bank conducts monetary policy through a network of banks in member countries called the European System of Central Banks. The European Monetary System, or EMS, was originally a system of fixed exchange rates implemented in 1979 through an exchange rate mechanism, or ERM. Remind yourself of the open economy trilemma discussed in week 9 and what implications a fixed exchange rate system might have for economies. The EMS has developed from a fixed exchange rate system into an economic and monetary union due to the Maastricht Treaty and its requirements. The Economic and Monetary Union, EMU, is a more extensive system of coordinated economic and monetary policies. Before we discuss the policies of the European Union, let us briefly investigate the historical developments of the EU and the EMS between 1973 and 1993. The EMS defined the exchange rate mechanism to allow currencies to fluctuate more or less 2.25% around the target exchange rates between all the member countries. To prevent speculation around what countries will do and how much the currency would be allowed to fluctuate, the member countries put exchange controls in place to limit trading of currencies. It also created a common market for financial assets. If you refer to the level of economic integration, this meant free trade of European countries and a common external trade policy, that is, a customs union. There was also a credit system developed among EMS members in order to lend to countries that needed assets and currencies that were in high demand in the foreign exchange markets. Differences in monetary and fiscal policies between the member countries remained, and this caused market participants to buy German assets and sell other countries' assets. As a result, Britain left the EMS in 1992 and allowed the pound to float against the European currencies. As a result, the exchange rate mechanism was redefined in 1993 to allow for bands of up to 15% of the target value in order to devalue many currencies relative to the Deutsche Mark, the German currency. Eventually, each EMS member adopted similarly restrained fiscal and monetary policies, and inflation rates converged. This conversion caused the speculations around the currencies to slow and even stop. You can also refer back to your readings in week 8 by O'Rourke and Williamson on the convergence of prices and trade. The Single European Act of 1986 recommended that trade barriers to trade, financial asset flows, and immigration be removed by December 1992. This allowed the EU policy to be approved with less than unanimous consent among members. The Maastricht Treaty was proposed in 1999, and it had 3 requirements or provisions that would transform the European market system into an economic and monetary union. The first was countries had to attain an exchange rate stability defined by the exchange rate mechanism before adopting the euro. Second, countries were required to have price stability with a maximum inflation rate of 1.5% above the average of the lowest free national inflation rates among European Union members. And third, it required restrictive fiscal policies with a government deficit not more than 3% of GDP, and a government debt ratio not above 60%. Moving further to an economic union, the member countries adopted the euro as the currency in 1999, and the previous exchange rate mechanism became obsolete. A new exchange rate mechanism, the ERM2, was between the Economic and Monetary Union of Europe and outside countries. This allowed countries outside of the Economic and Monetary Union to maintain a fixed exchange rate with the euro, if so desired, and made it easier for countries that wish to enter the union to keep their exchange rate stable. I will end this video here and continue with the theory of optimal currency areas in the second video.